Hello, viewers. Welcome to the Thursday stream, which I was streaming yesterday as a replacement for Tuesday, and then in my head, I was like, next stream is on Saturday, but it's tonight, so here I am. It was not a Saturday. Tonight was the next stream, so here we are streaming. Good times. All right, let me just hop on back to the menu. Yeah, let's talk about mental health, you all. Wow. I was going through something and I want to talk about that. So let's I didn't make any notes, but I just need to pull up a screen so I don't look at myself in the preview and look at the camera instead. Welcome Jubilee, welcome to the stream and good to have you here. I hope you are doing well. Um so for today's mental health topic, we are talking about what is a schema in schema therapy. And the reasons for me wanting to talk about that is, well, I've been wanting to talk about schema therapy for a while. This is the form of therapy that I was given really intensively for quite a while. And it really helped me through this episode that I had. And that's what I wanted to talk about is what the fuck just happened to me and what happened, because I realized this is what's happening. And the schema therapy gave me the tools to reflect on what it was and how to deal with it. And this is also something that, you know, it's like the first step in dealing with your issues in schema therapy is to recognize what a schema is and when it is being triggered. And I am purposefully using the word triggered in the serious way because when a schema is triggered, it does actually mean that it is a form of PTSD or post traumatic stress disorder, in that a schema forms as a result of trauma, often in childhood, not always, but often. And usually it's compounded upon later on. So let's say you have a traumatic event that happened to you in childhood, or even a longer pattern of like abusive things that happened, or like it could be a lot of things. It could be from your parents, but it could also be bullying. It could be maybe a single really intensive event that happened between you and like a child your own age, or it could happen between you and a guardian, or maybe a teacher hated you. Like it doesn't really matter uh like between which people it happened. What matters is that this was something that affected you very deeply, hurted you very deeply, in such a way that it began to form this schema that we call schema therapy. And a schema essentially is the whole of it's kind of starts with that trauma, with that pain, but then you build thoughts and behavior on top of that. So let's say you were bullied, you were treated badly by your peers. So you start thinking, there's something wrong with me. I'm not okay. I'm a bad person. I'm ugly. So those are the thoughts that are kind of going on top of that schema, on top of that trauma. So it starts to form. It's kind of becoming a mess, you would say. Hey Flynn, welcome to the stream. Welcome. We are talking about schema therapy because my schema got triggered, and I do mean triggered in that was a trauma that you know uh people use the word trigger or triggered as a joke, and I want to be very clear that that is not what I'm doing. I'm talking about the actual trigger. um so you have these thoughts that are starting to form that are, you would say, like twisted or corrupted thoughts, um because they're not true, right? You are a good person. You're just a child. You're not bad. You're not ugly. But you're starting to believe these things about yourself because you're being hurt by other people. Maybe they are directly saying these things to you, or you're starting to form these thoughts yourself. Then you start to develop behavior to cope with that because you have these negative thoughts. You feel bad, and now you are starting to do things to try to deal with this. So The behavior could be you fight back, or you avoid your peers, or you shut down, or you become like very violent and angry. Like it really depends on your personality and your environment, and it can also depend on your gender. It can also depend on if you're introverted, extroverted, physical person, if you're more thoughtful. Me as a child, I shut down. I just collapsed towards the inside. I was like, I just want to stay inside and avoid everything, and I just started blaming myself even more. But the kids cope with this kind of thing in all sorts of ways, and I do have to say, we talked about this before, that children with ADHD and autism as well receive a lot of negative messages, as right from the start, because they already experience being different. So that's on top of the schema. So that's kind of a different thing, but not really. You have to think, like we talked about before. This is just it's schema therapy. It's a theory to describe, to kind of understand what's going on. It doesn't mean that that is the way things are. It's kind of like a lens through which you can view these kind of issues and these things that happen to you, and understand how your brain and how your mind, how your soul, how your heart kind of works. So now we have this behavior that's a problem. So in order to cope with this hurt, children might also shy away from like social activities. Maybe you start eating lots of sugar to feel better. There's all sorts of ways that you start having this behavior that is not healthy, but it's the only way as a child that you can figure out, make yourself feel better, and to get away from situation or these people that are hurting you. So that's how it forms. And as you get older, either this hurt, like let's say you get older and you're a teenager and you're still getting bullied. So now the schema has grown, like it's gotten even bigger, because bad things keep happening. And this is also the case if you're dealing with parents who are very toxic. They're around you the whole time. So this problem, the schema just keeps growing, and it's just getting worse. And that's when, as an adult, this is where people end up in therapy in their 20s or 30s, because they're trying to get their life together. They're trying to build a relationship, get a job, just do all the things that you want to do in life. And they find that they really struggle with basically everything. They're depressed, they're anxious, they try to get help. And this is where schema therapy can help you figure out what's going on. So at the start, you're just there like, I'm stuck in life. I don't know what I'm doing. I just feel bad all the time. I feel bad about myself. And schema therapy, you learn how to look at yourself, and how to be like, oh wait, so those behaviors and those thoughts are not actually like real. It's like I am a good person, but I am telling myself these bad things. Okay, where's that coming from? And then you start figuring out what schemas are active. Like, what is this hurt? What labels can I put on these bundles of pain and thoughts that are negative and behavior that is harming me? And that is kind of what a schema is. So that is my unofficial way of explaining it. Obviously, once again, I am not a psychologist. I'm not a licensed mental health professional. I am a mental health advocate. And I'm someone who has had a lot of schema therapy, which kind of required me to understand all the theory behind it. So yeah. All right, that's a lot of talking. So schemas, there are a lot of them. When I was learning this, I think there were about 12, but that was 6 years ago. So I think now there's probably more schemas. So the base schema is, now I don't know the official labels in English, because I learned everything in Dutch. But I will do like a literal translation. So you have the base schema, which is called emotional deficit, which at its very core means that you are not being seen and understood and heard in who you are as a person. So the people around you Notably, your peers, your guardians, your parents are not seeing you as a human being with needs, with wants, with your own likes, dislikes. They're not seeing you. You don't feel valued in your existence. That is usually the very core of all the other schemas. So you have to think about that. It's like prime. It's like schema prime. But it's also, that is also the deepest pain, and it's also the hardest to heal from. And in a way, it's something that also stays with you. It's kind of like a scar that you walk around with. Like, it's never gonna, you're never not gonna have a sore spot when it comes to that. And that is a sad part about schema, and that's a sad part about growing up with all these negative experiences. So yeah, that's the biggest one. Then usually through bullying, you develop the schema called is a minority complex, or I think it's called deficiency. Basically, the core value there, the core fear or pain, is that you believe you are different than others, and you are kind of, you're a bad person, and you feel a lot of shame because of that. So there's more schemas. There's abandonment, which, you know, it describes itself. There's one that has to do with mistrust and abuse specifically. There's let's see, there's high demands, so people who put very high demands on themselves but also on others. There's submissiveness, so people who really adapt extremely to others. But there's also the opposite of submissiveness, is that people become very dominant and controlling in an effort to not feel this insecurity, not feel that pain. So that can also be a schema. And there's many more that I'm not gonna get into. So my schema got triggered. That's fun. That's fun. And I really had to think about which one, and it did actually come down to, I'm thinking about it now, but it had to do with rejection, with abandonment, but also the emotional deficit, as in not being seen, not being heard, not being valued in my worth, and not being valued as a person, and being treated badly because of that. And whilst I can go back all the way back to my childhood and be like, yeah, it was that thing. Like, there's a whole basis, of course, of things that happened as an autistic person growing up, being kind of forced to grow up neurotypical. Parents who, you know, struggled with their own stuff. Being bullied by my peers. So there's a lot of groundwork there for issues. Wonderful. But the thing that got triggered had to do specifically with being rejected in a professional way, like in a job setting. And I'm not going to get into that too much, like which employers or what exactly happened. Basically, I have this very intense anxiety of making mistakes at work. And of course, a couple of weeks ago, I think I talked about, a couple of weeks, I think it was last week. There we go. I talked about the RSD episode, the rejection sensitive dysphoria, and that kind of ties into that. So this is part RSD, but this week I also realized, wow, this is a schema being hit. And the reason I recognized that is because it was so intense and overwhelming, and I lost the ability to really think clearly. And another very clear marker of a schema being triggered is that you start thinking in absolutes. So you start having these thoughts are like, it's always like this, it's never okay, they're always saying this, or they're always treating me like that, and I'm never ever gonna be better, or these kind of absolute thoughts, and thinking that, yeah, all or nothing thinking. It's this kind of extreme coping mechanism from your kind of your child brain that can't really consider these nuances. And to that traumatized brain, kind of thinking in these absolutes is safer, because then you know which way to go. But we're adults, and that is not the reality of things. Reality is always more nuanced. It's not always all or nothing. Like, of course there's situations where, okay, this person's just not okay. That's not quite what I'm talking about. Yeah, thank you, Jubilee. Yeah, I was going through it, and thankfully Flynn was here yesterday for support, and streaming it last night also helped me calm down. So I was having this intense anxiety. I was having these thoughts about just always happens every time, and it's never gonna be okay. And but I was recognizing somewhere like, hey, this is a schema. I've learned about this. I know what's going on. I know that this thing is triggered, and that these thoughts I'm having are not reality. Like your brain is being an unreliable narrator, as they say. So I had the tools to deal with this, but it was still overwhelming. The anxiety was still there. I couldn't really think. I was just on a loop, and I was just feeling really, really anxious. And it also helps to recognize, okay, what's the main emotion that's happening here? Is it sadness? Is it anger? And I was terrified. Like this intense fear of rejection, of being abandoned, of loss, mixed with this not being seen for who I am. And the basis is that is for many, many, many years ago, I was rejected from a job in such a way that really, really messed me up. Like, I'll just be honest. I'm not going to name any names, but the way they treated me was super not okay. And that kind of tied into older stuff. So it became a part of this schema. All right, it's intense stuff to talk about. Yeah, and it really helps to realize this is a cognitive error. So, like, okay, this is happening and having all this anxiety, but it's not necessarily related to the situation right now because this past thing is being triggered and it's not about the current situation. Yeah, exactly. When you're in a mood, it's easier to remember things that correspond with that move and either feeds or triggers such thinking in my own experience. Yeah. So once you're already like so anxious, you start to remember all these bad things and everything seems horrible. And that's just not reality. And what really helped me is yesterday I was streaming and I finally got out of my own head, which allowed my anxiety to lower. And I was going to bed and I was thinking, I was like, hold on, let's go through these actual experiences that I've had, and did that thing that I keep telling myself happened over and over, did that actually happen over and over? So I started listing this off, like, well, with company A this happened, company B that happened, and I realized this particular situation has only happened twice. I was like, wait, it didn't happen over and over. Like, yeah, I've had bad luck keeping jobs, but it wasn't because of this particular thing that I was so afraid of. Um, and that really helped click it for me. Like, oh yeah, right, that is the schema talking. And well, actually, reality is not as bad as I thought it was. And that really lowered my anxiety. And I was like, oh, now I get it. Now I get it. Like, of course, the current situation is still causing me anxiety because that's kind of like the past hurt that I have to deal with. But I realized like, whoa, I was having like a full blown triggered moment, and that was really that really threw me for a loop. And looking back, it started last week when I was first triggered in this, and then I was kind of okay. And then I made more mistakes at work, so that kind of made my anxiety worse. But I was making mistakes because I was already like so my anxiety was already so high, so I wasn't able to focus properly, wasn't able to think properly. So I finally realized, whoa, that was it, and I was able to focus fine today. I was so productive today, so I was like, I know what I'm doing, I can focus again. God, I feel much better. Talked to my superior at work about it too, so I'm not going to get into that much because I don't want to talk about my job too much. I also want to clarify this is not something my employer did or said. They did nothing wrong. Obviously, this has to do with my own issues, so I don't want to badmouth badmouth anyone in this. That's actually a big part of recognizing, hey, these are my own issues, and this is something that belongs to me. Because a lot of people who are unaware of how these PTSD triggers work will tend to blame other people, and then you get into this dramatic cycle. So let's say with rejection, I mentioned this before. Let's say you're very sensitive to rejection because of bullying or whatever, and you ask someone like, "Hey, I want to give you a hug," and they say no, and you get super upset about this. This literally actually happened to me. And you're like, "Oh no, they hate me, I'm terrible, blah blah blah." And once again, it's that thing is being off, like it's being, I don't want to overuse the word triggered, but basically, once again, you are applying way more emotional, a much heavier emotional charge to the situation than is actually warranted by what happened. So when this kind of situation happens to me now, when someone's like, "Oh, I'd rather not hug you," or "I want to see this person instead of you," I'm just like, okay, fine. It doesn't affect me. I don't feel it as a rejection anymore. I'm able to think, hey, this person is allowed to have their own preferences, is allowed to have their own boundaries, and it's okay if they want to hang out with someone else than me. And that kind of emotional maturity is something you learn working through your trauma and working in Schematherapy. And that allows me to, be more balanced in communication and not be triggered all the time. And it's really important to respect someone else's boundaries and respect someone else's preferences. And when you are dealing with people who don't have this knowledge of Schematherapy or knowledge about just kind of this emotional maturity, so people who have not dealt with those issues, you will find that they keep pulling you into that cycle of them overreacting to the situation, and that kind of blaming you for that overreaction. It's like, no, you're the one who's getting incredibly upset about something that in reality is not that big of a deal. And so that's another reason why I encourage people to go to therapy, because that really improves communication between you two. And yeah, so this was for the first time in a long time that I've been this strongly affected. And I actually did not realize this was still such a strong trigger for me. So that was like, whoa, I just felt like blindsided. I don't want to, you know, offend blind people. I don't really know another word for this. I was really shocked, I guess. Like it came out of nowhere. And I was like, whoa, I didn't realize this was still such an intense thing for me. So yeah, I wanted to share what was going on with me because I had a real like what the fuck just happened to me moment. And thankfully I was able to work through it with the support of my partner and also a lot of friends who gave me like really helpful comments. When you are in this situation, when you get intensely upset in a very short time, you get very overwhelmed, chances are that you are dealing with this kind of trigger. And that's something I want to pass off to you. Like if this happens, it can be this thing. And for me it has been difficult to see, is this part of the schema, or does it have to do with being overwhelmed as an autistic person, because that can also happen. So if I'm in a situation where people are being very vague, they are saying things that their body language is not saying, so I know that they're lying or manipulating, but I don't know why. Like if there's a couple of situations where my autism gets like very, it makes it much harder to deal with people with it. I get overwhelmed, but that's not the schema, that's the autism. And it's very hard to figure out which is which, because you can also get very intensely upset if you're overwhelmed because of your autistic self. So those things are difficult. All right, Ghibli, you've had the biggest trigger since years last week and had someone of the same week, so strong and awesome you got through it. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, because I can totally obviously feel what you were going through. And well, it is good to realize that this was a trigger for you, and I hope you are feeling better right now. And I know you have a very awesome supportive partner, of course. You also have some of the background I do in learning how to deal with these things, but it still sucks. and it takes a shit ton of energy. You're just like, oh my god, why am I like this? But yeah, it's that's just, when you don't really choose, you don't really choose your life as a kid and as a teenager. Like, I didn't wake up and go like, hey, I think I'll be autistic now so everyone will bully me. Like, you don't have a choice in these things, and I often feel really envious of people who have had kind of an easy life. And I'm also often admire these people, as in I can see how much more they were able to grow, how much easier certain things are for them. And that doesn't mean that they don't have their own problems, because of course they do. But there is definitely a huge difference between people who have grown up in mostly a happy, healthy, stable environment, who weren't really bullied, whose parents didn't affect them negatively, and I'm often like, ugh, I wish I was you, but I'm not. I we have all this luggage, you would say, or baggage to carry with us. And um the most important thing is, to have people around you who understand that. Maybe people who've gone through the same thing, and if they haven't, that they understand that things just don't come as easy to you as they do to others, and that your feelings, are important and valid, and that you are not overreacting. This is a thing that deeply, deeply complex issue to you. Yeah, my anxiety settled down last night and this morning, and like I said, I was able to focus really well, and I was like, ah, yes, I remember how this works. My brain does the thing again. So that was, in a sense, also comforting. I'm like, all right, yeah, because when you get this high anxiety, this extreme upset, you cannot think properly. Like, you'll have problems storing and retrieving information just because your brain is being flooded by stress hormones. And that's one of the things I also realize, is that because you have trouble like processing information, the things people say and do around you are also going to come across different. And I've seen this in therapy in shocking ways, is that someone will say something, and in 1 second I will think that they said something completely different, and it's really creepy. And thankfully I don't have that anymore. But that is definitely one of the things that a schema can do, especially if it's very intensive. It will literally just twist the words of other people. You will kind of recall them differently. So they said one thing, and you kind of see it through a twisted lens. Like your glasses, you have to think about it like your glasses are broken, or the other way around, like upside down, whatever. And so the message that you store in your brain is way different than what they said. And therapy, group therapy especially, teaches you this feedback. So someone says something to you, you get upset, and then they ask you, what did I just say? And then you repeat it, and it turns out that's not what they said. So that's like, it was mind blowing to me. And that's also one of the things I keep in mind, is that in a situation where I am upset, or I just got triggered by it, chances are that I heard something wrong, or they didn't say what I think they said, because this is also part of this whole complex package. When people say just take a bath, yeah, I don't even have a bath. What am I gonna do? Yeah, they don't get it, and that's unfortunate. I think people are trying to be supportive. I was very happy. I did post about this like on Facebook, because my Facebook is pretty good circle of friends and family who are very understanding and supportive, and got good advice as well. So it does help to kind of gain some perspective about what's going on. And but yeah, people were very dismissive, like, just think happy thoughts. I was like, no, just go for a walk. Oh no, it doesn't work. I remember actually going for a walk when I was very upset, and I came back and I was still upset. I was like, this didn't help. It didn't help. No. So yeah, I do want to, like, later on in this mental health talk series, get into more of schema therapy. Like I will list off the actual schemas. There's something called modes, which have to do with the way you're thinking and behaving. Like for example, if you are, let's say you get very angry. This can be the angry child mode, which usually has to do with like physically stomping your feet, like an actual child tantrum. But it could also be something that's called like the angry protector, which is that you distance yourself from your feelings by being like very angry, like how dare you say this to me, and be like very like almost rationally angry. It comes across as very rational, but it's not. And there's a couple more modes like that that are very helpful to understand as well. So it is kind of a theoretical framework in which to understand what's happening to you. But you have to see it like this is not how to describe it. Like there's different frameworks for the same thing. So it's really like a lens through which to view what's going on. And yeah, if you have any more questions about schema therapy, please let me know because I know a lot about it. And once again, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I learned all this from therapy from very well trained psychotherapists and social workers. And yeah, looking back, it's been about 6 years since I went through all that, and I learned so much, and it still helps me every day. And an episode like this rarely happens. It used to be very frequent before all that, so it's very draining when it does happen. But the most important thing I think is to be kind towards myself, be kind towards yourself, and realize that even though, let's say, you have had a lot of therapy, you've had a lot of help, even though you maybe are taking medication, these things are always going to be a sore spot. It's always going to be something that you're going to have to deal with. There is no permanent fix or cure for this kind of extensive trauma or problems. It's not going to go away, and that's one of the things that I find hard to accept because I want to fix things. I always want to find a problem, fix it, and then no, it's gone. But no, these kind of things are gonna stay with you because this happened to you when you were young and your brain was growing. So it's a part of you, and it sucks, but it's true. And research has actually found that let's say your life was pretty okay, but trauma that happened to your parents or even your grandparents can actually affect you as well. And they call this generational trauma. And that's a whole other discussion because I don't know a lot about it. And but yeah, like these things can affect you without you knowing what's going on even. So just be kind towards yourself, knowing that um these are not things that are bad. It's not a bad characteristic you have. You are not wrong or corrupted or permanently damaged. Sadly, life hurts most of us. Like that's one of the things I had to learn is that most people are not having a great time. Life is actually pretty hard, and but good moments make it really worth it. So when we really connect to other people, when we really connect to our loved ones, um, when they really see us for who we are, and vice versa, and just having good days when you spend time together, when you can, whether you stay inside or go outside, I think any kind of enjoyment and just learning things and expressing yourself creatively, I feel all these things make life worth it, even though there is a lot of pain. So yeah, that's that's my big talk for today. I'm being very serious, but that's what these mental health talks are about as well. So oh, you got your second shot of Pfizer. That's great. Your anxiety is gone. Wow. I want an anti-anxiety shot. All right, I hope you don't get too many side effects. I didn't really get a lot of side effects from the second shot. I think I just mostly felt like I had a huge hangover and my arm hurt and I just had a headache and was tired for the weekend and I was like, what else is new? So happy that you are vaccinated. That is awesome. All right, let's just jump over to Mass Effect. This was a big intense talk, and I don't know about you, but I feel like shooting some Reapers. Hello, can I have that? There we go. Also, I really love this lipstick. It is just as bright as my shirt. Just like neon orange. It's amazing. So how do you guys like my support Moogle? Cute, right?